Okay, here it's Monday, March 30th. Ryan and I are going through Mosiah chapter 2. All right, Ryan. So if we look at this picture, what do you know about what's happening here in the, right here. What do you know what's happening here?
Other people are listening to King Benjamin's his speech.
Okay. So what do you know about kind of what happened in this part of the Book of Mormon? What do you remember?
Huh?
What do you remember is happening here? So he's speaking to the people. What about?
I don't know. His testimony?
Mm-hmm. And what else? So last time we talked a little bit about, remember he's getting old, so he's got sons, and so what's he doing since he's the king?
Pressing down his throne.
And so who's he going to give it to?
Mosiah?
King Mosiah, that's right. So that's the first, remember that's the first chapter, is him bringing forth the people. Now, it talks about that there's such a large amount of people that he needs to write down his words. So a lot of times people kind of consider this a primitive version of General Conference, where here the leader of the church at the time and a group of people is preaching to them. Then let's see. Let's talk about how the people are gathered together. Let's read verse 5 and 6. You can read that out.
And it came to pass that when they came up to the temple, they pitched their tent round about every man according to his family, consisting of his wife and his sons and his daughters and their sons and their daughters and their sons and their daughters, from the eldest down to the youngest, every family being separated one from another.
Okay, stop right there. So where is he preaching from?
A temple.
A temple. Okay, so from the temple, so meant to be symbolic there. What kind of message do you think he's wanting to pass on to them?
The Lord's.
Yeah, so something that's a little more spiritual. So that's going to be hopefully inspire them to the temple. And how are the people separated right now?
By families.
And that's really kind of what the whole existence of temples are to begin with, right? Is to bring families together forever. And so in verse 6, and they pitched their tents round about the temple, every man having his tent door towards the temple. So where's their house facing, or their tent?
The temple.
The temple, okay? And so very, very common to be able to have kind of our lives pointing towards the temple, making sure that we're temple worthy, we can go in. And number 2, if we are worthy to go in, that we do go in. And thereby they might remain in their tents and hear the words which King Benjamin spake unto them. So think about that. They stay in their tents to listen to the words. What's going to happen this Saturday and Sunday for General Conference?
We're gonna hear.
Yeah, but where are we going to stay?
At home.
All in our tents, right? And so that's very symbolic of what's happening right now, which is interesting. And then if we flip it over to the next page, Mosiah chapter 2 to 5 is all about King Benjamin addressing this people. And so the first part of his message that he wants to share with the people, the first part of chapter 2 is how King Benjamin has instructed the people in coming today. So in the second half of verse 7, he caused that a tower be erected that thereby the people might hear his words. So he wanted to be able to speak from the tower to have his voice heard, right? And then in verse 8, why don't you read verse 8?
And it came to pass that he began to speak to his people from the tower. They could not all hear his words because of the greatness of the multitude. Therefore he he caused that the words which he had spake should be written and sent forth among those that were not under the sound of his voice, and they may also receive his words.
Okay, so in verse 7, he has his spoken word. People that are there can hear. And then 2, people that can't hear, whether that's, disability or whatnot, they can read his words. And that's exactly what we see with General Conference today. We can watch it with our eyes, we can hear it with the audio, we can read it in the text. Pretty close to the exact same time. And then in verse 9, this is when he begins his sermon to the people. And so this is interesting. And so as I read this, think, why do you think he started his talk this way? My brethren, all you that have assembled yourselves together, you that can hear my words, which I shall speak unto you this day, for I have not commanded you to come up hither to trifle with my words which I speak, but that you should hearken unto me and open your ears that you may hear, and your hearts that ye may understand, and your minds that the mysteries of God may be unfolded to your view. So, what's he asking them to do?
To basically open up to the Spirit.
Mm-hmm. And why not?
Huh?
Why? Why would that be his plea?
Because the people are getting more wicked?
Well, maybe, but also it's the idea that if we compare it to, let's say, you've gone to church basically every Sunday, right? Well, the majority of Sundays of your entire life, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've been taught the gospel, and so going to General Conference this Saturday and Sunday, are we there to question their speaking ability or question the message?
No.
So the word trifle not, hither, I have not commanded you to come hither to trifle with the words which I speak, right? So don't try to find fault with it. Don't try to fight against it or debate. And then what's interesting here is, what do you think he means by, so you noticed that when he means, hearken unto me, open your ears that may hear, your hearts that you may understand, your minds, you recognize that that's with the spiritual, the kind of the spiritual listening. What do you think it means that the mysteries of God may be unfolded to your view? So think of it as mysteries of God.
So if you have any questions, your questions can be answered if you put your right mindset to it.
Yeah. So this isn't the topical guide. You want to read just this first little paragraph there about mysteries of God?
Mysteries of God are spiritual truths known only by revelation. God reveals his mysteries to those who are obedient to the gospel. Some of God's mysteries are yet to be revealed.
Okay. So like you mentioned, each of us have maybe some different questions or some different thoughts about what's kind of hard for us to maybe understand and maybe considered mysteries. As we prepare for this upcoming General Conference, what do you think we can do to have our ears open, our minds and our hearts also open?
We can pray before.
Mm-hmm. What would you pray for specifically?
To have your, so that your ears are open, and that your heart can understand.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's important. Let me show you this quick video. Let's turn it down. It's a little loud.
I ask you to reflect on the unique phenomenon that General Conference itself is. What we as Latter-day Saints believe such conferences to be, and what we invite the world to hear and observe about them. We testify to every nation, kindred, tongue, and people that God not only lives, but that he speaks. That for our time and in our day, the counsel you have heard is under the direction of the Holy Spirit, the will of the Lord, the word of the Lord, the voice of the Lord, and the power of God unto salvation. Those who will address us have sought heaven's help and direction as they have prepared their messages, that we may be filled with the Spirit of the Lord and be uplifted and inspired as we listen and learn. In the course of a general conference, we always stress the eternal verities of faith, hope, charity, and Christ crucified. In the wide variety of sermons given is the assumption that there will be something for everyone. If we teach by the Spirit, and you listen by the Spirit, some one of us will touch on your circumstance, sending a personal little prophetic epistle just to you.
Okay, all right. So that was just a nice, quick little video. We're going to shift now to, this is where he talks about how he served as a king. And so in the end part of verse 10, where he talks about, this is an intro, right? Like I didn't command you, I've not commanded you to come up with trifle my words, but open your ears, open your hearts, open your minds, that they may hear, right? And then verse 10, I have not commanded you to come up hither that you should fear me, more that you should think that I am, that I of myself am more than a mortal man. So what's he saying there? He's not more than a mortal man.
He's not more than you.
Yeah.
Not more than you.
So even though he's been a king, he's not bringing people here to the, hey, look at me, I led the people. He's, no, he's the same. He's on the same level. And like you, so in verse 11, why don't you read verse 11? It gives us an insight to how King Brennan views himself.
But I'm like as Esau's, subject to all manner of infirmities in body and mind, yet I have been chosen by this people, and counseled by my father, and was suffered by the hand of the Lord that I should be the ruler and a king over this people, and have been kept and preserved by this matchless power, to serve you with all the might, and strength, which the Lord hath granted unto me.
Okay. So how does he view himself?
No more than everyone else.
Mm-hmm. And who does he recognize as giving him power?
The Lord.
The Lord, right. And that's how a lot of leaders should be, people that command others. And so he continues to talk about how he's spent his days in the people's service. He didn't laden them with taxes. He actually worked. It says here in verse 14, I myself have labored with mine own hands that I might serve you, and that you should not be laden with taxes. And then in verse 15 he goes, I have not done these things that I might boast. Neither do I tell you these things that thereby I might accuse you. But I tell you these things that you may know that I can answer a clear conscience before God this day. Then after that, he goes into, in verse 16 and 17, talking about probably one of the more famous scriptures in our church about service. Why don't you read verse 16 and 17 to know more about service?
Behold, I say unto you that because I said unto you that I had not spent my day in your service, I do not desire to boast, for I have only been in the service of God. For behold, I tell you these things, that you may learn wisdom, that you may learn that when you are in the service of your fellow beings, you are only in the service of your God.
So when we help other people, who are we truly helping?
God.
And what does this verse maybe remind you of?
It sounds like from the New Testament.
What specifically do you remember?
Didn't Jesus Christ say that to...
Yeah. How did he say it? Do you remember, kind of?
If you're in the service of your fellow brethren,
Yep.
you're in the service of your God.
Yeah. So this is one of my favorite scriptures. For I was a hungered, this is Christ speaking to the people, I was hungered, and you gave me meat. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. Naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came unto me. Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee hungered, or fed thee, or thirsty, and gave thee drink? When saw we thee a stranger, and took thee in, or naked, and clothed thee? When saw we thee sick, or in prison, and came unto thee? And the king shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as you have done it unto the least of these my brethren, you have done it unto me. So as we serve other people, we truly serve Christ. We act on his behalf. Then the next, probably 19, the next like 5 verses are pretty powerful when it comes to our view on our place to God, that we are internally indebted to him. So before jumping into these verses, how do you think that we are indebted to God? Like like basically he loaned us something, and we are forever in his debt.
This body.
What else?
Coming to earth.
Right. So he gave us a body. We are able to come to earth. So we have this mortal experience. What else? That did God give because he loved the world?
His son.
Yeah, he gave his son. And then as you and I live, what happens when you and I keep the commandments?
We'll have immortality.
Well, we're gonna be blessed in immortality, but as you and I continue to follow the gospel, what does God, as we follow his commandments, what does he do to us now?
Give us blessing?
Yeah. So not only did he give us life, he gave us the atonement to be able to return back to him. And as we continue to make good choices today, we still get blessings. So we're going to read this just because I think this is powerful. That's how we'll end the chapter. But would encourage you, Ryan, to read chapter 2 today, if you haven't done so already. In verse 19, I'll read 19 and 20. I'm going to start at kind of the bottom. Oh, how ye ought to thank your heavenly King. So now we're in verse 20. I say unto you, my brethren, that if ye should render all your thanks and praise, which your whole soul has power to possess, to that God that has created you, who has created you, and has kept and preserved you, and has caused that you should rejoice, and has granted that ye should live in peace with one another. Why don't you read verse 21, 22, and 23, and I might stop you.
I say unto you that if ye should serve him who has created you from the beginning, and is preserving you from day to day, by lending you breath.
So lending, let's think about that. Lending you breath. What does that mean? He's not giving you breath, he's lending it to you. What does that mean? If I lend you something.
You're giving it.
But, so there's a difference between lending and giving. What's the difference?
You're gonna give it back for lending?
Exactly. So what if I'm lending you, if God is lending us our breath, what does that mean we should give back?
Or gratitude?
Our life. Right? Cool.
They may live and move and do according to your own will, and even supporting you from one moment to another. I say, if you should serve him with all your whole souls, that you would be unprofitable servants.
Okay, so if we thanked him all that we could, our entire soul could possess, and we served him with all of our souls, how do we still end up on this?
Unprofitable servants.
Unprofitable servants. Can't get out of it, right? So keep going, 22.
Behold, all that he requires of you is to keep his commandments, and he has promised you that if you would keep his commandments, you would prosper in the land.
Okay, so what is he asking us to do? It's pretty simple.
Keep the commandments.
Okay, and it's complicated, right? It's not easy to do, but it's a very simple task. Keep my commandments. He hasn't told you, Ryan, everyone's got to climb Mount Everest. No, he said simply, keep the commandments. And what happens when we do? So keep reading.
And he never doth vary from what he hath said. Therefore, if you keep his commandments, he doth bless you and prosper you. And now in the first place he hath created you and granted unto you your lives, for which ye are indebted
Yeah.
unto him.
Okay, and so like you mentioned, he gave us life. That's how we're first indebted, right? And number 2, read in verse 24.
And secondly, he doth require that ye should do as he hath commanded, for which ye do, he doth immediately bless you. And therefore he hath paid you, and ye are still indebted unto him, and are and will be forever and ever. Therefore, of what have ye to boast?
So what can we boast of ourselves?
Nothing.
Really nothing, right? God has given us everything and continues to bless us. He goes on to, and I'll finish here with verse 40 and 41, because I think it's pretty powerful as he ends this. Oh, all ye old men, and also ye young men, and you little children who can understand my words. For I have spoken plainly unto you that ye might understand. I pray that you should awake from the remembrance of the awful situation of those that have fallen into transgression. So remember those that have, it's a message for everybody, old and young, anyone that can understand his words. That if you fell into sin, remember those. And moreover, I would desire that you should consider on the blessed and happy state of those that keep the commandments of God. For behold, they are blessed in all things, both temporal and spiritual. And if they hold out faithful to the end, they are received into heaven, and that thereby ye may dwell with God in a state of never-ending happiness. Oh, remember that these things are true, for the Lord God hath spoken it. Powerful there to think about this concept, that you may dwell with God in a state of never-ending happiness. In this life, Ryan, we are tricked and we are deceived by the short and simple things that might be small-time pleasure, small-time satisfaction. But what God is presenting is never-ending happiness, or in other words, being happy forever. So encourage you to read chapter 2. There's a lot of great doctrine in there, a lot of an ideal way to view our place in life. We're not more than any other mortal man because we have the gospel in our lives. We can prepare ourselves for the upcoming general conferences that you might hear throughout your entire life, having that kind of mindset, opening your hearts, opening your ears, opening your mind, And that as you and I do so, I know that the Lord will speak to us through his servants. And I know that the words that are written and spoken of by King Mosiah, or King Benjamin here, are true. And I say this in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen.
All right, Ryan.